What's up guys, it's your boy Matthew, this is Practice Squadron, and recently the San Antonio Spurs have been hit with injuries at the point guard position. Tony Parker left the Spurs after 17 seasons, and that was most likely because the Spurs had their point guard position locked down after DeJounte Murray became the clear starter. Some regarded him as a steal for being just the 29th pick in the 2016 NBA draft. At just 21 years old, in his second NBA season, he was recognized on the all-defensive second team. This was a key part of how the Spurs were a top 3 defensive team in the 2017 to 2018 season. But on October 7, 2018, Murray suffered a torn right ACL in a preseason game against the Houston Rockets, potentially costing him this entire season. All hope was not lost though, because the Spurs drafted Derek White with the 29th pick in the 2017 NBA draft. In the 2017 season, he would mainly stay in the G League, but he did win an NBA G League title with the Austin Spurs. He averaged 20.1 points, 5 rebounds, and 3.5 assists in 24 regular season appearances with the Austin Spurs. In the 2018 Utah Summer League, he was tied for most points per game at 23. After Murray's potential season-ending injury, White was named the starter, but soon after he too was hit by injury, this time in his foot. He is expected to miss anywhere from 2 to 8 weeks. That leaves only Patty Mills and traditional shooting guard Bryn Forbes as the San Antonio Spurs starting and backup point guards. Today I want to talk about some potential trades that I think the San Antonio Spurs should be getting involved with to upgrade their depleted point guard position. As far as assets that the San Antonio Spurs do have, they own all their first and second round picks for the next 2 years, and a top 20 protected first round pick in the 2019 NBA draft from the Toronto Raptors, and the Kawhi Leonard trade that should be transferable considering how talented that Toronto Raptors team is. The cheapest trade option as far as price for value could be any Knicks point guard. The Knicks wouldn't mind trading their players for assets, especially when trying to clear cap space for the upcoming free agency. We have Trey Burke, Emmanuel Mudiay, and Frank Ntilikina. Trey Burke is on the last year of his contract and is expected to make about $1.8 million this year. In the 2017-18 season, he averaged 12.8 points, 2 rebounds, and 4.7 assists per game, as well as shooting 36% from 3 and 21.8 minutes per game. His shooting and passing ability could be useful in a Greg Popovich system. Being on the last year of his current contract, the Spurs wouldn't have to give up much to get him. Potentially the Raptors' first round pick, or maybe even 2 second round picks. Emmanuel Mudiay offers similar skills to Trey Burke with less efficiency from beyond the arc. Mudiay averaged 8.6 points, 2.4 rebounds, and 3.2 assists in 19 minutes per game. New York acquired the former number 7 pick in the 2015 NBA draft by trading Doug McDermott and their 2018 second round draft pick this previous trade deadline. It isn't hard to imagine that they would trade him for the Raptors' potential late first round pick or 2 second round picks. Unwanted players such as Mudiay have been found to find success in San Antonio in the past, so it might work out this time as well. The least likely of the 3 to be traded is Frank Ntilikina. The number 8th pick in the 2017 NBA draft did not live up to his hype, as he only averaged 5.9 points, 2.3 rebounds, and 3.2 assists, as well as shooting barely above 30% from 3 and almost 22 minutes per game. The Spurs have been able to find success in turning traditional non-shooters such as Kawhi Leonard and Kyle Anderson into effective shooters, so it isn't a stretch to imagine that the Spurs can work on his efficiency. Frank does come at a higher price because he still has 3 years on his rookie contract. The Spurs would probably have to give up both a first and a second round pick for the young point guard. The once 29th pick in the NBA draft by the San Antonio Spurs could find his way home after spending 2 years in Toronto and last season in Indiana. Corey Joseph saw a dip in his points per game, dip from 9.3 in his last year in Toronto to 7.9 in Indiana, even though he averaged more minutes per game. It has been rumored that the Indiana Pacers are excited about Aaron Holiday and wouldn't mind parting with Joseph, considering he is also in the last year of his current contract. I don't think Corey would be worth a first round pick, but it might take 1 or 2 second round picks to reunite him back with Greg Popovich. Patrick Beverley is known as one of the most impressive defensive point guards in the league. After a year of being injured, the rising Lou Williams and Milos Teodosic added to the fact that he is on the last year of his contract. The Clippers could part with him for some future assets. As far as comparing him to previous players mentioned, he is a better scorer and a better defender than all three Knicks point guards and Corey Joseph. This is why he potentially would cost more. The Raptors' first-round pick and a second-round pick should be able to be enough to acquire him. These last trade scenarios are on the higher end and are less likely to happen. The Spurs could throw their hat into the ring with a Jimmy Butler trade. Now, this doesn't solve their point guard position dilemma, but Butler does give the Spurs a boost of playmaking and scoring, considering he was good for about 22 points per game last season, sliding into the shooting guard spot and allowing DeMar DeRozan to run the point could create a matchup not many teams would be able to handle. This would allow Patty Mills to stick to his sixth man where he is most comfortable. Even though Butler is on the last year of his contract, the price for an all-star in the West isn't for the faint of heart. It is also rumored that any team looking for Butler would also have to take on Gorgui Dieng's outrageous 3-year contract. It was rumored that the Miami Heat were giving them Josh Richardson, Dion Waiters, and a protected first-round pick for Butler, but they didn't want Gorgui Dieng. The Spurs would need to offer a similar deal in Pau Gasol, Davis Bertans, and the Raptors' first-round pick, and potentially even a second-round pick on top of that to acquire Butler. Keeping with the Timberwolves, Jeff Teague was good for 14 points, 7 assists, and 3 rebounds per game last season, after being passed on by the Atlanta Hawks in favor of Dennis Schroeder and being benched in the playoffs last year for Derrick Rose. Teague is definitely expendable. His passing and shooting could be useful in a San Antonio Spurs system, and he would be allowed to let the offense run through Aldridge and DeRozan, similar to how he was in Atlanta with Millsap and Kyle Korver. Pau Gasol and a first-round pick should be enough to get Teague away from the Timberwolves. The most unlikely scenario is a trade for Kemba Walker and the Charlotte Hornets. Walker was being shopped around the trade deadline and the draft for a team willing to take on Nicholas Batum's outrageous 3-year, $72 million contract. Pau Gasol has less money and a shorter contract than Batum, but is it worth it in order to get an all-star point guard on a 1-year rental? Batum isn't a slouch in the NBA, but he is nowhere near as good as his contract says he is. He only averaged 11.6 points, 5.5 assists, and 4.8 rebounds per game last season. But who knows, a reunion between him and his former Trailblazer teammate LaMarcus Aldridge could be enough to give the Spurs depth on their bench, especially in the playoffs. In this scenario, the Spurs are probably looking at a similar package as the Butler trade, with Pau Gasol, Davis Bertans, the Raptors' first-round pick, and potentially even a second-round pick. The Spurs were still playoff relevant before Murray and White went down with injuries. Should the Spurs go out and make a splash by trading for any of these players? And if there's any players that you think that they should target, let me know in the comment section below. As always, don't forget to like and subscribe. And P.S. How good would DeMar DeRozan be at running the point?